afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the lair of the film Exorcist. Today, we will be taking a look at Star Wars, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, the third movie in the original trilogy, and the sixth movie in the entire Star Wars saga, which takes place before Episode 7. So, basically, we start out watching two droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, going to save, or initiate the plan to save Han Solo, which turns out to be in three parts. Starting with Leia bringing Chewbacca there, saving Han Solo, Luke going there to save Han Solo, Leia, Chewbacca, and the droids, and then we end up on the sail barge. A really great fight happens, and basically this movie it was created to end the conflict between the Empire and the Rebels, and it's masterfully done. It gives us the final battle between Darth Vader and Luke, and the biggest fleet in the Star Wars trilogy next to the Battle of Coruscant's fleet. And so let's get on to the crew. It was directed by Richard Marquand, produced by Howard Kazanjian, screenplay by Lawrence Kasdan and George Lucas, story by George Lucas, music by John Williams, the greatest composer so far, cinematography by Alan Hume. It was edited by Sean Borton, Marsha Lucas, and Dwayne Dunham. And on to the cast. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are giving up the locations. It was a bit of a long moment in the series, so let's get on to it. We have Mark Hamill back as Luke Skywalker, but this time as the Last Jedi. Harrison Ford as Han Solo, Carbonite, and the smuggler we love to see in battle. Carrie Fisher is back as Leia Organa, the warrior prince, the senator and princess of Alderaan. We have Billy D. Williams, the cunning scoundrel from Episode 5, back as Lando Calrissian. Anthony Daniels is back as C-3PO. Peter Mayhew is Chewbacca. Kenny Baker is R2-D2. Ian McDiarmid plays the Emperor. Frank Oz comes back as Yoda, the great Jedi Master. David Prowse is Darth Vader. James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader. Sebastian Shaw is Anakin Skywalker after the helmet is taken off. And Hayden Christensen is Anakin's Force Ghost in the 2004 movie, which actually kind of angers me and a bunch of fans because he looks nothing like what he would if he was an older man. He looks like what Anakin looked like before he was burned, so he looks a little too young. We also have Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Warwick Davis is in this movie as Wicked W. Wark, and it's his very first role in a Star Wars movie. On to favorite scenes. First one for me is Luke versus the Rancor. Great scene. Hype. It gives you a huge hype at the beginning of the movie where we see Luke fighting a huge giant monster that just ate a Gamorrean guard, which is one of those pig guards, and it's amazingly done with Luke having only bones, a rock, and the Force to guide him in this moment of turmoil. And if you look at the Rancor, it's just an amazing design, very scary, and it reminds me a bit of a T-Rex, but with bigger arms and a smaller head, and it's a big creature compared to most in this series, and it's the first big creature we get, next to the Sarlacc pit, which we see later on in the beginning of the movie. And I think Rancor might be one of my favorite characters next to the Porg. Yes, you may hate me for that. but it was funny and gratefully done, with Luke killing the Rancor with a rock, just smashing the control panel, and it was very, very smart. We also have the speeder bike fight, which, if you love the pod races in episode 1, you probably love this, because it's a high-speed chase on our very first speeder bikes. I mean, we get the Bark speeders in the Clone Wars, and we get the the Lancer speeders in the 2003 Clone Wars, but this is the first actual Imperial speeder bike we get to see, and we watch Luke and Leia on speeder bikes chasing after 3 scout troopers, just so they don't report their location, and it's just so fast-paced, and we get to see Luke use his lightsaber against them, blocking blaster bullets for the very first time, and Leia, just how she was able to defeat the scout trooper with the bike, but also making him look away from what he was driving into, and it's a pretty funny scene. And lastly, the Battle of Endor, all 3 parts. Let's take this down. Basically, the first part is the land battle, where we watch the Ewoks, the Rebels, and the Imperials fight against each other just for Endor, and to protect the bunker, which controls the shield generator that's protecting the Death Star. And without it, we wouldn't also have the great space battle, where we see the biggest fleet in the original trilogy, made up of mostly Rebel ships and Mon Calamari cruisers, and it's watching them go up against the Death Star and an Executor Star Destroyer, and all those Imperial Star Destroyers. It's just gratefully done, especially the scene with the A-Wing accidentally kamikazing the Executor cruiser, and sadly, that is the moment where my favorite character, Admiral Piett, dies. May he rest in peace. But we also get the third and final part, because this movie was the one that started our cycle of 3 parts that we see in episode 1. It's the battle between Luke and Darth Vader and the Emperor. It's gratefully done. It shows us that Luke has learned a lot from episode 5 and episode 4, and we watch as he actually completes his training as a Jedi by refusing to fight Darth Vader, turning off his weapon before Darth Vader strikes, and this is also where we see that Darth Vader may not be all the way gone, where we thought before that he was just a villain, but now we did get most of his story, and we watch as father and son fight against each other, but we also get to see Luke take into some of his hatred, like Obi-Wan in episode 1, where he uses his anger over Vader threatening to use his sister as a pawn. He attacks Vader and starts just whacking at him using his anger, but then it leads into him just realizing what he has done and turns back to the light side, which wouldn't have worked with the original scene that Lucas had in mind, where Luke takes up Darth Vader's mantle. But this was a really good scene, and it makes you feel for Darth Vader in a bit when you see him feeling sorrowfully as the Emperor is killing his son, and he takes out the Emperor. So yeah, that's why I like these scenes. On to saddest scenes. Guys, these, I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm about to say. First one, Yoda becomes a Force ghost. It's very sad. You watch Yoda walk around making jokes as he seems a lot older than what he was in Episode 5. And again, he is cracking jokes like, when as old as you are, not as good, not look as good, you will not. Which is pretty funny because the Yoda is over 900 years old. So, I don't think Luke's gonna make it that far, and we all know he doesn't, but also, just watching Yoda just fade away after he dies, becoming one with the Force, you feel for this character despite only knowing him for this film and the last film. And he's a powerful character, and it shows us that Luke is going to be the last Jedi, but also it's the moment we learn of Leia being Luke's sister. And lastly, death of Darth Vader. It's a very sad scene. What else can I say? I mean, it's the scene where Luke takes off Darth Vader's helmet, and we watch them have his sorrowful gaze as he tells his son that he was right, and to tell his sister that he was right about him, and what he was right about was that he could bring Darth Vader back to the light side, which he does by getting himself almost killed by the Emperor and having his father stand up for himself to attack the Emperor and save him, which brings him back. And just, you watch Luke's gaze as you see him. It almost looks like he's about to cry as he watches his father dying, wishing he could have brought him back with him to Endor, which we sadly end up seeing Vader being burned or incinerated like most Jedi. So, yeah, on to favorite lines. Guys, number 1, Luke Skywalker, your overconfidence is your weakness. Palpatine, your faith in your friends is yours. Funny thing about that, he was kind of wrong. I mean, if Luke had no faith in his friends, they wouldn't have won this battle, because not only was the rebellion about hope, but it was also about faith in the greater good and in those who can make a difference. Where Palpatine was very overconfident during this whole thing, thinking, oh, he's gonna win because he foresaw it. But he was wrong, and he was also overconfident about Darth Vader being on his side and not betraying him. So Vader gets so close, he lets Vader get so close that Vader ends up killing him and saving his son, which, guys, the lesson here is, don't get overconfident like Palpatine, or you might just get bitten in the ass. And the second line is, and say it with me, people, it's a trap! By Admiral Ackbar. A really good line, very funny, and it has become a huge meme to this day because it's just a massive line that everyone knows, even if you haven't seen these movies. And it's the moment where the rebellion realizes that they are basically done. They are in a huge pickle because the Empire knew or let them think that they were going to be vulnerable. So the Empire had this huge plan, and they basically tricked the rebellion. But in the end, the rebellion wins, despite the odds and despite the trick played on them by the Emperor. So onto my opinion, which basically, guys, I love this movie. I really do. But there are some moments that I don't like the extra Jedi rock scene where we have to watch Bug Eyes and the lippy woman. I don't know what she's called, but it's just, ugh. Do we really need a close-up of some alien's lips as it's singing? I mean, God! I would have rather seen the dancers more than this, and that bug, just terrible. I mean, it is a really good alien, but do we really need that whole scene? And there were some bad parts in this, I will admit that. Some that I haven't mentioned yet, but there are some good scenes. Like, I don't hate the Ewoks. I actually find them pretty funny and pretty cute. I mean, look at it this way. They're basically the Vietnamese in this movie fighting against an oppressive force that's trying to take over their planet, and they're using every resource they have, from rocks, arrows, and logs, and homemade gliders, which this is really good and pretty smart on the director's idea, and for George Lucas to create them. And the reason why they're funny is, actually, if anyone remembers, there's that one scene where the one Ewok hits himself with a rock as he's trying to throw the sling, similar to Jar Jar Binks when he hits himself with the electro ball when he's trying to throw it similarly to the Ewok. And it's actually pretty funny. But, yeah, this movie has one of my favorite space battles next to Rogue One's Scarif and the Battle of Coruscant, even though I don't really count it as much of a battle. It's more of a theatrical... Actually, yes, it's kind of a battle, but we barely get to see any of it. And Luke's really grown from the whiny farm boy in the original movie, and we see all these developments. Even Han Solo can't believe it when he expresses his disbelief for when he hears Luke has become a Jedi Knight. But this is a really good movie. And again, there are flaws, but it is a really good conclusion until they came out with Episode 7. So, I'm giving this movie a 7.8 due to the minor problems that brought this movie a bit down for me, but it's still a really good movie, and that's why I haven't put it any lower. So, yeah, this is our review. We'll see you guys next week for the sequel trilogy, and good afternoon, have a great night, and may the Force be with you, always.